Not a week goes by that we don't hear a heartbreaking story of a missing person. Children, mothers, brothers, sisters, often gone without a trace. Time is crucial in these cases, and so is the public's help. If you came face to face with a missing person, would you recognize them? Tonight, CBS 42's Cynthia Gould brings us a special experiment to find out.
We planted our pretend missing child in downtown Homewood with the permission of police. We put up several missing persons posters in store windows at local businesses.
I'm waiting for my mom.
And 10-year-old Marianne Smith set right out in plain sight. Within minutes, a concerned parent.
What's your name?
My mom.
Oh, she's here?
Yeah.
We let the family know it was all just a test.
Were you positive it was her?
No, but I asked my wife.
He looked at her and said, "That looks like the girl who's missing." And I looked at her again and I confirmed. I was like, yeah, it absolutely does.
They had seen 4 or 5 of the posters, and as parents of young children, it quickly got their attention. But as the crowds grew for the lunch hour, our missing little girl was lost in the shuffle.
Did you notice that she was right here?
No, I didn't. I was not perceptive. I was wondering what happened to her. You know, is she alive?
Johnny Jones was out for an afternoon walk and took a close look at the posters.
Sadness, heartbreak, hope she's alive, said a special prayer for her.
These airmen also paused, concerned they took pictures with their iPhones ready to post them on Facebook. When we approached them,
Did you happen to notice the little girls here? We're doing a TV experiment.
No way.
Lacey Gano says he remembers being lost in a store as a child, and these cases always grab his attention.
I saw this, 4'8", 77 pounds, like this young lady is lost, and some parent is in sheer panic.
These women also carefully read the information about our lost little girl, but then they walked right past her.
They even read her birthday. I think it was 1/10/2002.
Even when we put our missing child side by side with her picture, it was tough for some to ID her.
Only if I knew the person that was missing would I really pay attention to it. It doesn't stick in my mind well enough to actually remember.
All the people we encountered said they pay very close attention to those Amber Alerts, but the posters can get lost in all the clutter.
The Amber Alert gives it a sense of urgency that it must have just happened and it's really something that needs to be addressed now, whereas the others, you don't know if they've been hanging there for an hour or 2 weeks.
Sergeant Andrew Didcock with Homewood Police isn't surprised by our results. He says today we all have such information overload, it's no wonder one picture didn't stick in many people's minds.
I went to a class recently and they said we have to see or hear something 7 times before it becomes a habit. In today's world, we just receive so much information that we do need to see something repeatedly before it becomes part of our memory.
That's why it's so important these images of missing people are shown over and over again, and that the public take a good long look at them. Cynthia Gould, CBS 42 News.
There are 85,000 active missing persons cases in this country. Juveniles under the age of 18.
Your first reaction to all of this would likely be to run and fast. But not these guys.
Ow.
It's just another day at the office.
Look at all the stingers.
Talk about earning your paycheck. Mike Sykes and Joe Shero are honeybee removal experts. Sometimes even their protective gear is no match.
How many times are you expecting to get stung here?
Depending on how lucky I am and how long I keep my suit on, probably 5 or 6 times. Ooh, they mean down there.
Still hurts?
Yeah, it still hurts.
We caught up with the two on a job in Mountain Brook at the Stevenson home.
It was last fall. We noticed a few bees moving around, and over the winter they kind of were dormant, but then this spring they really kind of picked back up.
That's some bad bees right there.
And And business has certainly picked up for these guys. You might say they're busy as bees. Getting rid of the hives, though, is time-consuming and only for the trained hands.
First job we did, it took us 10 hours to do. We've got it down to about 4.5. If you spray them and kill them, and there's 100 pounds of honey over your sheetrock, that honey's going somewhere.
So instead, the bees are carefully removed. First, the siding comes off the house. Then the bees are sucked up with a special vacuum into a box.
Depending on the size of the swarm and how long they've been in there, you're talking anywhere from 20 to 50,000 bees in a hole.
As you can imagine, they get riled up during all of this.
Ow.
You might say they are mad as hornets. And it only takes just one who's escaped to put this reporter on the run. Next, the giant combs are cut out and the sweet honey collected. Finally, the crew gets a moment to enjoy the spoils of war.
Put your finger in it.
There's no bees
Bacteria cannot grow in honey. This is what you call a frame with a wax foundation.
Once the bees are safely removed, they're taken to a new home in Mount Olive where they are more than welcome. And here they quickly begin making sweet honey.
It's a sweet ending to a stinging situation.
They're still all over me.
Cynthia Gould, CBS 42 News. Well, that is right, Sherry. If you're in the right business, of course, stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, they're sold out of space heaters and other cold weather supplies. But if you talk to the folks over at Steel City Pops here in Homewood, well, these popsicles are selling very slowly these days. We're not out of the woods yet. Ice and dangerous temps are still a threat.
We've had to take all of our outdoor plants and bring them inside the warm greenhouse in fear of the root systems freezing. Our heaters in the greenhouse have been running pretty much 24/7.
The tables at Sweet Peas in Homewood are usually full even in the winter. They've had to drain the sprinkler system and turn off the water to keep their pipes from freezing. And customers are staying home.
People don't want to get out in this and they don't want to drive in it.
Culver, like some of the local car washes, is looking forward to the weekend warm-up. With a frozen fountain, even restaurants like Purple Onion, usually open 24/7, had to close Monday night when temps got too low. Meanwhile, those in the public service sector know closing is no option.
I've been through the winter storm of 1993, stuck on Highway 78 all night, so yes.
This is nothing.
This is nothing.
Lieutenant Smith says firefighters, even battling blazes, can be affected by this extreme cold.
We keep them hydrated and keep them well nourished. These apparatuses all have heaters in them. If I got one of the guys wanted to get out of the weather, we can be there for several hours and sometimes until relieved early in the morning.
And relief from the cold can't come soon enough for everybody. And a reminder, tomorrow could be another dicey day out on the roads with black ice. Lieutenant Smith tells us he's always surprised to see how fast many people still drive on the roads in these conditions, so please play it safe. Live in Homewood, Cynthia Gould, CBS 42 News. Now with Gabe Watson acquitted, his parents talk with us in an exclusive interview.
When she walked in her room, you felt her presence. She lit up the world. Everybody wanted to be around her. She just was one of those special, special, special people. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her. I always will. She was part of our family.
Glenda Watson remembers the horrible news of Tina's death and flying to Australia to comfort her son.
He was just a ghost of a person. He just, it just broke your heart to see him. He just really, he said to me that, you know, she wasn't his wife but 11 days, but she was his soulmate.
She says far from the unemotional husband portrayed in the media. Counselors who worked with Gabe were prepared to testify.
And they knew how grief-stricken he was.
The Watsons say they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to prove their son's innocence, with judges in both Australia and America finding Watson did nothing intentional to harm his wife. As for the prosecution,
I can't imagine how much of your money they spent. We spent 90% of everything we had.
and while they're satisfied with how the case ended, they would have liked the world to hear the defense side of the case.
We had a very solid defense that would have blown the prosecution out of the water.
Among their witnesses, Dr. Carl Edmonds, a preeminent authority on diving in Australia. He was prepared to testify Tina's death was an accidental drowning by a panicked diver.
The family believes former Attorney General Troy King pushed this case here for political reasons. You can find much more of our interview with the Watsons tomorrow on CBS42.com. They try to set the record straight on a lot of misinformation still today about this case.
This whole case has a lot of huge things in it.
It's hearsay. It's not coming in. I'm not going to continue to argue these issues with y'all. Judge, now, if y'all can't accept my ruling, you know where Montgomery is? Take it off.
A heated exchange in court as prosecutors try to include statements made by Tina Watson. It wound up being another blow for the prosecution. The judge in the Gabe Watson murder trial will not allow a dive reenactment tape. That tape was trying to show discrepancies in Watson's story about how his wife died. Cynthia Gould is at the courthouse. Cynthia, why did the judge throw out the tape?
Well, Kim, basically, Judge Tommy Nail said there were just too many variables in this dive tape. In the reenactment, you had two male divers as opposed to a male and a female to represent the weights of Gabe and Tina. Now, in other dramatic testimony today, the defense tried to blame someone else for contributing to Tina's death.
We were doing a drift dive on this one.
Wade Singleton was the tour director on Tina and Gabe Watson's dive trip to the Yongala wreck site. He's the one seen here in the background of this photo as he raced toward Tina Watson to bring her to the surface.
Was she exhaling on the bottom when you went to her?
No.
Is that one of the reasons you went to her?
Yes.
On cross-examination, the defense attempted to deflect blame onto the dive company, saying by not following its own procedures, it contributed to Tina's death.
Are you familiar that the findings stated that the failure by Mike Ball Dive Expeditions to provide in-water supervision of Tina allows an argument to be made that that was the proximate causation of her death?
Sorry, am I aware of that?
The couple had declined an orientation dive, something used to make sure divers were able to handle the conditions. Tina was a novice diver and had never been diving in salt water. But Singleton said with Gabe's experience as her dive buddy, they did not insist on that orientation.
So why do we have standards and why do we have policies in a dangerous sport of diving if we're not going to follow them? Can you answer that?
No, I can't.
The company was fined $10,000 by workplace health and safety investigators in Australia.
And later today in testimony, we heard from the coroner in this case. He said the cause of death was drowning, but in one other key statement, he said, quote, he cannot tell how she drowned. Now, he also told us the autopsy was done some 22 hours after Tina died. It is recommended you do it within 8 hours because the testing is much more accurate at that time. We'll have much more on this case coming up tonight at 6. Reporting live, Cynthia Gould, CBS 42 News.